Hello, everyone. Welcome to another presentation in DAAC 2343, current issues. And today we're going to be talking somewhat about media literacy and how to pay attention to what is being presented to us through television, radio, press, not so much social media. I want to do that in another presentation later. But just some conventions that have been developed in practice for years in advertising products and things like that to the customer and to sway in public opinions. And so without any further introduction, I think I'm going to jump over to my PowerPoint presentation and we'll get started. I'm in my garage. You'll hear some traffic noise, but trust me, it's a lot quieter than my house. So, media literacy. Tastes great, less filling. What exactly is being sold and how? The power of the press, the media, is something that's been recognized for a long time. I can't remember who it was. I think it may have been Shakespeare who said that the pen is mightier than the sword. And it certainly is, and much further reaching as well. This is one of my favorite magazine covers of all time. My favorite magazine covers of all time happened to show up on National Lampoon, which is a now defunct humor magazine that was based on the old Harvard Lampoon. It's got a quote from William Randolph Hearst on there. Give me a magazine cover with a beautiful girl, a dog, or a baby on it, and I'll show you a magazine that sells. And if you'll go to your TV or pick up a magazine or listen to the radio, well, not so much on the radio, you won't get that, but anywhere there are images, you'll find that this is a combination that is tried and true and works beautifully, and that's why everyone uses it. Not quite this way, but I still, that cracks me up after all these years. And William Randolph Hearst was right. He also made this observation: you furnish the pictures and I'll furnish the war. And he was right about that too. Is that fake news? Yeah, it is, and no. But there's always been fake news, and there's always been biased reports of the news, and biased editorials, and biased everything in the media. Here is one from the Teddy Roosevelt era back in the early part of the 20th century, where the jester here is cranking out yellow sheet after yellow sheet after yellow sheet off of his yellow press and feeding it to the masses who are eating it up. And boy, have we heard about that lately, huh? This image here is an image that appeared in Hearst's, I think it was the San Francisco Chronicle, where it first popped up. And it's a battleship blowing up, and you can see the sailors flying through the air, obviously doomed. And it's a picture of the battleship Maine, a U.S. Ship that was blown up in Havana Harbor that predicted the Spanish-American War. Spain, 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 you'll never see Cuba again. You struck the lick that made you sick the night that you blew up the Maine. And he did. Spain did everything it could to avoid that war, by the way, and claimed forever, and still claims it had nothing to do with the Maine being blown up. And later inquiries into the Maine discovered that the explosion was internal. It was something that happened from the inside out rather than from the outside in. But anyway, we don't know exactly what happened to cause the Maine to blow up and sink, but it was a good enough reason to go to war with Spain, and we did. And there's an 8-month war in 1898, Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders, all that kind of good stuff. American imperialism, the American press would not allow this war not to happen. The United States needed Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. We were an empire as well. It wasn't just the British who, or the Dutch, or the French who had their colonies. We got them. And in fact, with the exception of Cuba, we still have them. Anyway, the idea of fake news and news pushing an agenda is not new. Newspapers, magazines, radio and TV, they've long influenced the thinking of Americans. They influence our politics. They influence our entertainment. And they always have. As long as they've existed, they've done that. And this is not by accident. Advertising is a science in the United States. It's very carefully calculated to reach certain targeted individuals and to sell them certain ideas. And by selling them the ideas, we sell them products. Of course, the press is not always one's friend. This is LBJ, and he was president when I was in my teens. And I watched the Vietnam War kill this man. He aged and fell apart right on TV. And he said, if one morning I walked across the top of walked on the top of the water across the Potomac River, the headline that afternoon would read, "President Can't Swim." And we have seen that happen, to people. We've seen it recently. In true confession, I'm not much of a Trump fan. Actually, truer confession, I'm not any of a Trump fan. But he was treated awfully unfairly from Jump Street by a group of attack journalists who tore him a new one before he had a chance to really do anything. And it was something that surprised me. It was probably the most harshest, biased position I've ever seen the press take towards anyone initially. Johnson had a point. Words do matter, and you don't have to be calling people names or any of that kind of stuff to spin a version of a story. And everything that you read is spun in a way. It's very, very hard to find. In fact, I would hazard to say it's impossible to find anything on TV and the press that's entirely unbiased, because we all look at it through the filters of our own experiences, our beliefs, our values, etc., and so forth. And we present it that way. Language spins reality. Images, what I decide to show you, spins reality. Show me the pictures, I'll give you a war. When combined in the manner Hearst suggests, they shape both opinion and reality. And if you consider General Benedict Arnold, for instance, here. I don't know what he looked like, but I found some pictures and it said, "This is Benedict." So there you go. He's got a colonial uniform on anyway, huh? Two spins. Interesting thing, before I say anything about this at all, here's a picture on the left of Rachel Maddow, and she is on the left. And here's a picture on the right of Tucker Carlson, and he is on the right. And you can take it to the bank that these two people can look at the same thing and give entirely different explanations of what it is. I would hazard to guess right now that when this popped up on your computer screen, you had a somewhat visceral reaction to this. You looked at one of these two people and went, "Oh," like they're a friend, or "Ah," like they're something you need to wipe off of your shoe. That's very common in modern America, because when we look at this, we're looking at it through a socio-political lens very often, more than not. But they can tell the same story or they'll talk about the same incident, same occurrence, but it's a different story. It's an entirely different story. Benedict Arnold, American trader, surrenders Fort Detroit to redcoats. Low-life son of a bitch. Loyal subject comes to his senses and proves loyalty to King George. He redeems himself because he realizes that what he's doing is treason against the crown. Legend has it that he did it out of resentment and for profit. I don't know that for sure. You don't either, but we can discuss it, I guess. Two truths, absolutely. People look at the same thing and come to different conclusions. And the conclusions they come to are not necessarily based on the evidence that's at hand or the information that we have to sort through. So you're entitled to your own opinions, but not your own facts. That's what Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan had to say about it. And I'm a big admirer of Moynihan's. But what are those truths? And objective truth can be a very, very hard thing to find. 2 and 2 equals 4, right? 75 million is more than 70 million, right? Yeah. Lenses come into play when we look at things. We interpret things from our age. We interpret things from our gender, our experiences of being male or female or whatever. We interpret things from religion, our beliefs, our morals, our values, our ethics that are tied up in that. We interpret things through our politics. How we see something is very often based on where we stand politically. We interpret things geographically. The values and concerns of the South are not, particularly during the Civil War area, and the agrarian South were not the same values and concerns as the industrialized North, particularly the Northeast. Education, how much we know about things, how much we can understand things. I mean, there are conversations that I get myself involved into sometimes that I'm absolutely lost. I cannot hold forth for any length of time about engineering or nuclear physics or quantum mechanics, that kind of thing. And about a zillion other things that presents a filter for us. And sometimes that filter is more like a dam or a barrier. I can't let things through because I don't know how to, or I'm afraid to, or I'm unwilling to. So, sometimes I just won't see because I don't want to see. Well, this is pretty interesting and all, but aren't we in a substance abuse counseling class? I heard that. Someone was raising their hands out there. And we're already, a few minutes into this. Yeah, but this is relevant for what I want to do today in talking about substance abuse and the way we view it. Media tells us, guys, what to eat, what to wear, how to smell, what to think, where to go, how to feel, what to drink, which car to buy, what medicine to take, what to smoke, and a whole bunch of other things too. We're constantly bombarded with information, and this is a unilateral communication because we're not responding to it. This isn't a dialectic. This really isn't communication. This is indoctrination that we're getting because we can't ask it questions. We can't communicate back. We can't give it feedback. We don't. But we're consumers and repositories of the information that the advertising companies and that the production companies and whatnot want to pour into us, and pour it into us they do. How? Language. Again, the words that they use and how they use them are designed and particularly chosen to influence us to go one way or another. And sometimes they're chosen to inflame us, to create emotional responses or what have you. Images do that too. A picture's worth 1,000 words, as Hearst pointed out. Give me the images, give me the pictures, I'll give you a war. Music. People begin to feel sad when they hear some old love song that has meaning to them, or patriotic when they hear the Star-Spangled Banner or something along those lines. We are also influenced by product placement. I'm watching a TV show and there's two of my favorite actors on there drinking Budweiser beer, and I'm going, wow, I sure could use a Bud, because they're, and who's sponsoring the show? Oddly enough, it's Budweiser. By linking, by doing things like, hey, if you drink this beer, look at these women. You could be sexually successful, because you drink this beer, you could get babes like that. Or maybe you have to get them drunk. I don't know, whatever. But there's a linking of one thing to another, and sometimes those things are terribly unrelated. They don't jive at all, but nevertheless, we have them, right? Then there's appeals to false authority. I love those. We have movie stars come on and tell us how to think, how to drink, how to vote, how to interpret, how to whatever. And what do they know? They're actors. And I'm being discounting here. They may know a lot more about a certain subject than I do. But the point is, because you start in a hit TV show or an action movie, it does not give you the authority to speak intelligently or authoritatively about a particular subject. But boy, we like that. And then there are downright lies. I mean, people lay some crap on you. And in the early days of advertising, they certainly did that. If you take this product, you won't grow old. You can live to be, 150 years old. You won't get sick. You won't die. You'll look young. You'll be taller. Your breath will be fresher. You'll be a better dancer. That kind of stuff. False claims. Social media, like I said, don't get me started. We'll table that for a later date. Social media is interactive, but boy, if you want information on how to live, on what's going on how to take care of yourself, on what, there's hardly anything that you could imagine that you would want information on that you could get off Facebook that's reliable. You know that, right? I certainly hope that you're not basing all your information off of memes and stuff that your friends post, because frankly, I don't know your friends. You love them. I love them too. They're posting bullshit. And when challenged on it, when I find things that claim, sometimes I go immediately to fact check. And I'll start doing some fact checks, and then I'll backtrack from there, because I don't trust fact check either, for that matter. So I'll try to find 2 or 3 sources and see if I can't come to the true skinny on something. Anyway, once upon a time in America, things were simpler. And I lived in that simpler life. When I was a kid, we had 3 channels plus PBS. I didn't really count PBS because they tried to educate me, and screw that. That wasn't what I was watching TV for, right? So we had 3 channels. They had newscasters on those 3 channels. We had 3 newspapers in Houston. We had the Houston Post, the Houston Chronicle, and the Houston Press. And since that time, 2 of them have gone away. We're a 1 newspaper town, really, as far as the major press is concerned. And people have kind of abandoned using newspapers anyway, so print media has somewhat fallen by the wayside. But we used to get a lot of information from newspapers and from magazines. Time Life, Time Magazine, U.S. News and World Report, Life Magazine. My God, I loved Life Magazine. And then there was Look and, National Geographic. You can find information in magazines. And we had encyclopedias, which were books. You could go to books and look things up. But I could check facts and stuff that way, but when I watched TV, I'd see things like these people. This guy on the left with the dark hair is Dean Martin, and he had a show called The Dean Martin Show back in the 70s. This guy on the right is Foster Brooks. He's a guy whose whole comedic shtick, his whole career, was playing a drunk. Drunks are funny, right? That's why we have all of these hugely hilarious alcoholics on television, like Dean Martin, who was an alcoholic, by the way. The character, Foster Brooks' character, he was an alcoholic as well. I don't think Foster Brooks actually was himself. Martin probably so. But we had Crazy Guggenheim, who was on Jackie Gleason's show. We had Otis, the drunk from Andia of Mayberry. We had Freddie, the freeloader from Red Skeleton. And there was, funny drunks everywhere. If you know an alcoholic, if you've been around an alcoholic, if you've watched an alcoholic, the one thing you know about them is they're not funny, and neither is their illness. You're looking at something pretty serious there. But on TV and in films, they were funny. They were good-natured. They were hilarious. They didn't hurt anybody. They weren't brutal people. They were just well-meaning old doofuses who liked to drink a little too much. That's bullshit, of course, but that's where it's portrayed. Everyone smoked. I grew up in a world where everyone smoked. There were ashtrays in everybody's house, I have pushed my shopping cart down the Gerland's aisle with a Marlboro hanging out of my face. I smoked in doctor's offices and dentist offices, on airplanes, in taxi cabs, in school, everywhere. It was okay to smoke. It wasn't a no-no. People drank. Dean Martin drank on his show. Dick Martin and Dan Rowan drank on their show. Johnny Carson, early on, he and his guests both drank on their show. And right now Stephen Colbert drinks on his show, so it's not something that's unknown to us. Married couples slept in separate beds, and people didn't go to the bathroom. The first person ever to go to the bathroom on television was Archie Bunker. And, of course, you didn't see him in the bathroom, but Michael asked Edith, say, Ma, where's Archie? And she says, oh, he's in the reading room. That's what she called it. And you hear the toilet flush, and here comes Archie down the stairs tucking his shirt tail in. We had women like June Cleaver who stayed home and kept the house immaculate while wearing flowing dresses, pearls, and high heels, and pushing her vacuum cleaner. And everyone was white. Y'all knew that, right? Everyone smoked. Not a no-no. This is one of my favorite Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall movies. It's called To Have and Have Not. If you haven't seen it, see it. It's a terrific movie, and it's great for its time. And all of the smoking going in here, as a narrative device, is causing time to pass. It's bringing these two characters together, and it's erotic. The cigarette smoking that goes on between these two characters here is very erotic. Here's a comedy show from the 1950s called I Love Lucy. Starred Lucille Ball, Desi Arnaz, William Frawley, and Vivian Vance, who played Ethel. This is the Ricardos and the Mertzes. They all smoked. They all drank too. Married couples slept in separate beds. Kind of makes you wonder how they got babies, huh? But anyway, found them in a cabbage patch. This is Dick Van Dyke playing the role of Rob Petrie, And this is Mary Tyler Moore playing the role of Laura Petrie. Mary Tyler Moore also played Richard Diamond's secretary in the old Richard Diamond's detective series of the 50s and 60s. And it was kind of her first big role. And you heard her voice, but you never saw any higher than her butt. Because when she walked in, they would play the wah, 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 kind of saxophone thing to basically as a signal to anyone who's watching a TV show or a movie back in those days, here comes something sexy. So if you're reading a newspaper or something, you look up when you hear that music, right? And here comes this lower half of a woman walking into the frame and looking really good too. Long legs, tight dress, tight skirt, high heels, and she says, got another case for you, Mr. Diamond. And sexy voice. So that was all that you got of Mary Tyler Moore at the time. By the time Dick Van Dyke Show rolled around, you got to see her from the waist up, too. The idea that somehow or another back then that there was that it was a pristine environment for TV watchers and kids like me isn't really true. It had its sexier moments. Anyone who ever watched Kitterick on Channel 13 in her skin-tight kitty cat suit knew that it wasn't necessarily a show just for kids. Anyway, women stayed home, kept the house immaculate in flowing dresses, high heels, pearls. This is Barbara Billingsley in her most famous role as June Cleaver, and Hugh Beaumont in his most famous role as Ward Cleaver. They had a child. His name was Beaver Cleaver. Get it? Beaver Cleaver? These guys were having lots of fun at the viewers' expense, whether the viewers got it or not. But this particular scene is 1950s erotica, man. What he is doing with her in the kitchen and their proximity and where his hands are and everything and what she's doing, cooking, have some symbolism to them, you know. So June was great in the kitchen. And I have mentioned that everyone was white. And, well, they were for the most part anyway. Ricky Ricardo here is played by Desi Arnaz, who was actually married to Lucille Ball in real life for a period of time. And they had a couple of kids together who also grew up to become actors and actresses. But Ricky was Cuban, and his tendency to complain and rant in Spanish was part of the show. I mean, it was a thematic element. Lucy would do something, and he would be, ay, caramba, you know, and stuff like that. And he would go off on a long Spanish rant that was funny because Lucy didn't speak Spanish, oddly enough. He also had a tendency to discipline Lucy, who always had some splaining to do. So there was some spanking going on there. Subliminally, although this is played for hilarity, maybe a message someone might get is if your old lady displeases you, it's okay to hit her, which is not a good message to put out there. Standards were different in those days, and what was being promoted was not always an intentional evil thing or anything like that, but this is not a very dignified way to treat someone that you're married to, you agree? 50s programs, consequently, and 60s programs, and back before even, reflected idealized ideas about life, simple problems that rise up that you can solve in 22 minutes and 40 seconds plus commercials, right? And so they didn't really reflect reality, although some tried and some tackled adult themes. This is a picture from one of the longest running shows on television called Gunsmoke. And much of this show was set right here where the actors are, and that's by the stairway in the Long Branch Saloon. This is Amanda Blake. She starred as Miss Kitty, and she ran the Long Branch, and she was Marshal Matt Dillon's love interest. Milburn Stone played Doc, and he liked to imbibe a little bit, was a bit of a drinker. Festus was played by Ken Curtis, who was actually a really nice singer. He sang for a long time with a group called the Sons of the Pioneers that also featured another famous cowboy named Roy Rogers. He was the bad guy in The Killer Shrews, the original 1950s movie. This is James Arness. He played Marshal Matt Dillon. You're probably familiar with his brother if you watch TV of this era, because his brother was Peter Graves, who played as Joey's uncle on the old Fury movies about the kid and the horse, and he was also the top dog in Mission Impossible, his brother, I mean. Little known fact, he also played the giant carrot creature in the original Thing from Another World. Anyway, interesting, Miss Kitty. She was a madam. She ran a whorehouse. The Long Branch Saloon was not only served drinks, but you could rent girls there too. And you could see the cowboys going up and down these stairs with them, in almost every episode, at least for a long time. I think they stopped doing that after a while. Every show just about had a scene in the Long Branch Saloon. I can't think of one that didn't. Or with Miss Kitty coming out of the Long Branch. And so these characters sat around and drank a lot, Miss Kitty, Amanda Blake, unfortunately, was died of AIDS in the 1980s, and that kind of ended that. She was also the romantic interest of Matt Dillon, and a sexual intimacy, a sexual or romantic relationship was strongly intimated in this. Still pretty white though, right? Not when these guys showed up. This is Amos and Andy. And when you talk about Amos and Andy today, it's likely to offend African Americans. It's likely to surprise Anglo-Americans. A lot of people who weren't around during this era don't know anything about them, never heard of them, don't remember them. But Amos and Andy's been around a long time. They were originally characters developed by two white guys, Freeman Gosden and Charles Correll, and they appeared on the radio in the 1920s. Gosden and Correll, not anything shocking for their era, did public appearances in blackface where they were Amos and Andy. But something that was unique about Amos and Andy is television was totally white. You didn't have ethnic programs for people. You didn't have, anything that appealed. You didn't have Spanish-speaking TV. You didn't have that kind of stuff. So for a TV show like Amos and Andy to show up that's almost entirely black characters. I mean, there'd be a white guy on there sometimes, but he usually played a tax collector or some kind of city official or, something like that, who would be a foil for Kingfish and Andy. This is Amos, by the way. The storyline of Amos and Andy is two poor black dudes out in the country in Georgia, cotton pickers, decide they're going to go to Chicago and make it good. So Amos, right here, Alvin Childress, and Andy Spencer Williams went to Chicago and formed the Fresh Air Cab Company. They called it the Fresh Air Cab Company because the first cab they had didn't have a windshield. And so Fresh Air Cab Company, they turned it into a marketing ploy. Kind of interesting since we're talking about advertising, huh? And Tim Moore played Kingfish. I loved that show when I was a kid. It was already in reruns when I first saw it in elementary school. But my friends and I, who grew up in the segregated South, didn't know anything about black people. We thought this was it, you know. I always loved to see Kingfish get in trouble, especially with his lady Sapphire. And he had some catch lines that were, you know, every kid in my school knew. Holy mackerel, you know, was one of his lines. Something happened to be holy mackerel. And when Sapphire would come in, he'd puff up because he loved her and he wanted to be, you know, impressive to her. So he'd pull himself up tall and he'd take his cigar out of his mouth, because he smoked just like Andy did, and he would say, why, hello there, Sapphire, and his voice would drop 2 octaves to make it a deeper bass. The show was brilliant, and the way it was put together for comedic effect, but it had themes and elements in it that would certainly be considered racist today. But if you're studying or have an interest in, the history of black actors, black Americans in the cinema, you can't leave this out. They employed a lot of black actors. And they did have stereotypes, like Lightning, who was a very slow-talking, slow-walking, step-and-fetch-it kind of character. And they did have people like Rochester Anderson, who was a sidekick to Jack Benny. But they were stereotypical people. They weren't developed in any way. They were two-dimensional. They weren't. There was no depth to them. Still, it was a breakthrough. And at this time, you would find no products that would be advertised particularly to the African American community. They were entirely overlooked as a demographic for marketing. And if you're out there listening to me today and you're African American, let me promise you, you are not overlooked as a demographic for marketing today. You are targeted all the time. Some popular shows, very popular shows. These were also white shows. Leave It to Beaver. That wasn't like my house. I Love Lucy. That wasn't like my house either. Gunsmoke, Dick Van Dyke Show. The Flintstones also hawked booze and cigarettes. What? The Flintstones? Wait, they're a cartoon. They sell vitamins, right? I hear you. Yep, but it seems they sold more than vitamins. Here's Fred and Barney selling Busch Bavarian beer, and here's Fred and Wilma selling Winston cigarettes. Winston cigarettes and Busch Bavarian beer actually sponsored the Flintstones for a number of years. The Flintstones premiered in 1961. I was 11 years old. And I was a big fan, watched them every time they came on, and watched the commercials too. So there was a normalization and even a glamorization of drinking and smoking that took place for people who grew up prior to 1971, whose childhood was prior to that. Things changed around that time, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the things I saw on TV and the things I saw in movies did not have an anti-smoking message or anything like that. They were pretty much sexy. Is smoking sexy? It can be if you're conditioned to it, and very, very grown up. This is James Dean, who was a sex symbol of the 50s. Late 50s. He didn't make many films, but my God, he was brilliant in them. He's got incomparable roles in Giant, which starred Elizabeth Taylor and I'm trying to say Cary Grant, but that's not. Rock Hudson is one starred in it. He was in East of Eden, a movie made from Steinbeck's marvelous novel. He was in Rebel Without a Cause, and he died in a car wreck, driving too fast, by the way. So he made cigarette smoking look sexy, and I would see James Dean sitting here like that, and I'm thinking, man, how cool I would look, Howard Bushart, with a pack of Winstons rolled up in one of those T-shirt sleeves, posing like that. Wouldn't the girls dig me? You know? Lauren Bacall, over here again, and To Have and Have Not. I think she turned 20 years old when she was filming that movie in 1944, if I'm not mistaken. She made cigarette smoking terrifically sexy. And pretty grown up, too. I mean, I was watching it as a kid, but, it seemed like a very adult thing to do. And why wouldn't it? I was conditioned to it. Look at this. Victory cigarettes, King cigarettes, Target cigarettes. That's candy. It's sold to children, guys. Bubblegum cigarettes, sold to children. Big League Chew, sold to children. Why wouldn't we be susceptible to cigarette advertising later on? And this is probably the most heinous one of all. It breaks my heart looking at it. Just like Dad, candy cigarettes, yeah, just like Dad, just like my dad, who died of lung cancer, just like my two little brothers who died of lung cancer, just like my third little brother who died of cancer and cirrhosis of the liver, yeah, just like Dad. Winston cigarettes and Bush beer, like I said, sponsored the Flintstones. Fred and Barney sold both Winston's and Bush in television advertisements. And this is in your course room. I put some commercials in there, some links to commercials that you can go to and look at these. Cartoons are reliable spokespeople for advertising campaigns because you can erase them and start over. You can do all kinds of things with cartoons that you can't necessarily do with live actors and actresses. And, and they appeal to people. They appeal to everyone. They appeal to kids. We're raised on them, although cartoons certainly didn't start out as something that was for children. They were definitely for adults. But, and then we have product placement. And other than commercials, it was not that evident in the Flintstones. It didn't show a lot. It did show them smoking, on the programs, but it was in other programs of the era more prevalently, and still today. Smoking and drinking didn't become part of the background of the scenario so much in the Flintstones. Product placement today. If you watch television today, you may recognize some of these scenes. This is from Criminal Minds. This is I think it's still on. It was a very popular ABC series and about FBI profilers, and they were sponsored by General Motors. So guess which vehicles show up in almost every episode that the guys have to go outside on. If they go somewhere, this is how they get there. GMC, Chevrolet, SUVs, black ones, sleek ones, look good, look powerful. Boy, I tell you what, that's almost as good as having a gun, right? It's very Freudian. So these vehicles showed up, and why wouldn't they? As a way of advertising the product of the company that puts up the money for you to film your show and pay your actors and actresses, etc. Product placement is advertising, although it's pretty subtly done sometimes. These are scenes from the ranch with the two brothers, Ashton, what's his name, and Danny, what's his name? I can't remember. Anyway, drinking Budweiser beer. Superman jumping out of a Marlboro cigarette truck that he was thrown into, if I remember the scene correctly. Hijacking a load of cigarettes from a trucker in the movie Goodfellas. And look at all those Pall-Malls. Do you think Marlboro, Pall-Malls, and Budweiser just kind of sort of showed up there for no particular reason? No, of course you didn't. You're not that naive. The tobacco companies, the beer company, paid pretty pennies to get these people to drink their beer, steal their cigarettes, break their truck. And tobacco advertising itself, you can still do this stuff in the movies pretty much, as far as I know, but it was banned in 1971 on television. And since 1965, warning labels are required on tobacco products, and those were strengthened in 1971. So that if you're consuming a tobacco product, it tells you on that product, this is hazardous. You could die. This could kill you. Amazing, right? Now there are warning labels on films and television programs that the contents include such things as nudity, violence, adult content, bad language, and smoking. Janice and I were laughing about that the other day. We were watching some Netflix stuff, and there's, the warning comes on there: bad language, nudity, violence, smoking. Smoking? You get a warning from the ratings people for smoking nowadays? Yep. But no one told Matt Groening. That's Marge's sister on the Simpsons, and that and doing what we're just saying that you're not supposed to do on TV anymore. And there's other instances of that too. And Homer drinking in the Simpsons cartoon show. One of my favorite lines is when he's trying to romance Marge and he tells her, "I'm drunk on your love and beer." Tobacco product legislation started happening in the 60s, and we begin to see the first anti-smoking ads in the 60s too. I can't remember the guy who played Hamilton Berger, the prosecutor in the old Perry Mason, Raymond Burr Perry Mason series back in the day, but he died of lung cancer, and he made a commercial and said, he said, "I didn't mind losing all those courtroom battles in court, but I'm in a battle now that I don't want to lose, because if I lose, it means I'll lose my wife and my kids," and yada yada. And he talks about his lung cancer, and it's heartbreaking commercial. Yul Brynner did the same thing. Another very famous actor starred in the original Westworld and in Taras Bulba and a bunch of other action adventure things. Anna and the King. He was well recognized and a sex symbol of the era. He also made a commercial about how it was such a bad idea to start smoking. And John Wayne, who died of lung cancer in the 70s as well. So the Cigarette Labeling and Advertising Act of 1965 required warnings on cigarette packages and limited advertising on radio and TV. You can't flood the media with this stuff anymore. If it's controlled by the Federal Communications Commission. And that became a big loophole also by the time you got into cable and stuff like that, because a lot of the contract sites, the sites that you can, purchased. They're not regulated by the Federal Communications Commission. And you can get stations show you all kinds of things, right? In 1970, Richard Nixon signed the Public Health Cigarette Smoking Act, and this legislation went into effect in 1971. It officially banned all cigarette ads on television. So from 1971 forward, no more advertising tobacco or tobacco products on television or on the radio. The last legal airing of a cigarette advertisement occurred at 11:59 p.m. January 1st, 1971, rather. I'm sorry, that's the wrong date on there. It's January 1st, 1971. And it appeared at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And the advertiser was Virginia Slims, a specifically targeted, a product specifically targeted towards women smokers. We'll get to that later. Tobacco companies can no longer sponsor, because of that legislation, concerts, sporting events, etc. They cannot market certain items or logos. Teams can't wear them, their logos on them. Advertising continued in print, of course. And, I still remember going to things like Little League games and stuff like that where you could still see alcohol and tobacco ads out on the fence, any sporting events. Advertising continued in print and still continues to some extent today. And there's mail advertising still occurs. I get stuff from my son David and my daughter Nancy who are both smokers and both struggle with trying to quit. And they're one of the reasons I tried to quit and did quit. But, still get marketing from Camel, from Winston, things like that, little packets and stuff that show up in the mail. And since it's their own product, they can do things like send you a hat that has Camel cigarettes on it or Winston cigarettes or whatever. So why? Why do people do this? Who are they trying to sell? Targeted advertising again. These are Dakota cigarettes. And they had a campaign that came out 90s, went through the 2000s. I don't know if they're still doing this or not, but I probably ought to check and see, since I'm talking to you about it. Who do you want smoking Dakotas? Can you take a look at this and tell me who you want smoking a Dakota? Well, I can tell you who they want smoking a Dakota. They want a blue-collar girl, a girl from the neighborhood bars, a girl who likes to ride motorcycles, an outdoorsy kind of girl, a blue-collar girl, a girl that you might find working on a construction site somewhere, but she's still sexy as all get out. And she's got maybe a high school education, maybe a year or two of college, but she's her own girl and she's a free thinker. And she's grabbing life by the horns and doing all this kind of stuff. And part of the Dakota cigarette ads, if you walked into a convenience store when they first initiated this campaign, I've done a double take 24 times because I walk past a silhouette of one of these girls who's standing there around 5'2" and curvy, and catches your eye when you walk in, but she's a cutout. And that's what she's there to do, is to catch your eye when you walk in. And if you're a woman in this demographic age group, you're supposed to walk in and see these sexy, free-spirited girls and go, that's me. Give me a pack of Dakotas. That's what it's about. They're selling you on an image or a concept, and that concept's not real. That concept's not real if you're 40 years old and you're not 5'2", you're 5'9", and you weigh 203 pounds, not 114. That's not you. But the image that they're selling you is you. How about Virginia Slims? Virginia Slims targets women also. And the Virginia Slims, when they burst on the scene, advertise themselves as a woman's cigarette. They are slimmer than a man's. They're a little longer than a man's. They're more dainty, more feminine. And it kind of plays up to that, to a girly girl idea. But then all of a sudden, it makes a hard turn, and now it becomes for an independent woman, etc., and so forth. And they've got "You've come a long way, baby" as a slogan. And I've put some of that, some links to that on in your classroom too. But right up here, I hope y'all can see that. I hope your computer's tall enough to see that. It says Julie Kelly, of the famous dance team of Kelly and Kelly, lit up a cigarette in the wings of the Palace Theater in Atlantic City, New Jersey. 30 seconds later, Kelly and Kelly became Kelly and Schwartz, two men. They did commercials showing women suffragettes, women marching for the right to vote, and a recording of a guy saying that, well, if you give them the right to vote, next thing they'll be wanting to smoke just like a man. It evokes female liberation, feminism, independence, strong women, etc. And their song was "You've come a long way, baby, to get where you've got to today. You've got your own cigarette now, baby. You've come a long, long way." And indeed you have. Be proud of yourself. You're dying at the same rates of lung cancer as men are now. And lung cancer has, up until the 20th century, late 20th century, always been a man's disease. But not anymore, because you've come a long way, baby. There are commercials looking back at the 70s and at the late 60s and 70s from the perspective of 2021 were horrible. Mrs. Rhonda Brown went down in the basement and decided to smoke a cigarette by her canned preserves, and her husband caught her. And even though she was 34 years old, sent her immediately to her room without her supper. You've come a long way, baby. Cools are probably one of the examples of the really, really nastiest example of targeted advertising that you can find. Menthol cigarettes in general are targeted toward young African American smokers. Cools doesn't give a damn if anybody else in America smokes their brand, because this is who they're targeting. And they've done it in print, they did it in on the radio, they did it in television when they had the opportunity to do it. Cool, because we don't like rough puffs. Here, Cools, very smooth, like a cool mist. So good, it's got to be cool, right? Appealing specifically to young African Americans. And it's a campaign that works. The biggest consumer of cool cigarettes, African American men, younger men, generally between the ages of like 15 and 48, I think it was, that are the big consumers of this. Then there's this guy, bop, 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 bop. Come to where the flavor is. Come to Marlboro country, babies. Cigarette advertising pre-1971. I came into my majority in August of 71. I turned 21 years old. So I was raised on, grew up, like I said, on these jingles and these catchphrases and things, So if you hum me a little bit of the cigarette advertisement, I could tell you what product it was, because I was inundated with it. Every time I cut on the radio or TV, they'd be sponsoring something. And this is a very, very successful advertising campaign that started in 1954 and lasted in the United States and America until 1971, and then continued in Europe, and probably still continuing somewhere today. Now, it's not continuing anywhere today unless it's in reruns. It ended in 1999 in Italy. Cigarette advertising pre-1971, selling the cowboy killer, Marlboro Reds. Marlboro Reds became known as the cowboy killer because of the shitty luck that the macho models had with that product. The Marlboro Man was a character in a very successful ad campaign. The very first one died a few years ago in his 90s. He never smoked. He wasn't a smoker. So when you saw him riding around with his Marlboro on his horse and stuff like that, he couldn't wait for him to say cut so he could throw the damn thing down because he didn't smoke. And he lived a long life. There were several models in the campaign, which, like I said, ran between 54 and 99. But the ads created a link between smoking, sexuality, independence, and masculinity. Remember what I was talking about earlier? These things have sexuality, independence, and masculinity don't have a damn thing to do with smoking a cigarette. Nothing, not a zip, none. But the marketing campaign created one, and now I think, wow, I got this Marlboro hanging out of my lip. I'm pretty sexy, And I know people told me not to smoke because it's bad and stuff, but I'm independent. And besides that, I'm a by God man, a grown one too, and I'll do what I want to do, etc. and so forth. Marlboro Man cowboys Wayne McLaren, David McLean, David Hammer, Eric Lawson, and Tobin Jackson all died of smoking-related diseases, as did my father, Roy Lee Bushart, my little brother, Roy Wayne Bushart, my other little brother, James Michael Bushart, and also Charles Preston Bushart, leaving me the last man standing out of that group. But wait, tobacco advertising on TV has been illegal since 1971, and that's true, it has been, but in America, not in Europe or Latin America, and at least not universally in those nations. There are no more TV ads in the U.S. There are no more radio ads in the U.S. There's no more sponsoring athletic events in the U.S. And there are active anti-smoking ads in the U.S. that have been going on since the 1960s. And this is a risk reduction, harm reduction method that has shown great promise. It's done a lot of good stuff. Our culture has changed since then. But in the United States, though tobacco advertising is banned on TV and radio, smoking-related illness still kills around 500,000 Americans annually. That's like twice as many people dead from smoking-related illnesses as are dead from COVID now. Actually, more than twice. Way more than twice the 70 million or so people who died from opiate overdoses last year. Or 70,000 rather. I didn't mean to say 70 million. Strike that. I'm beginning to sound like a pundit on one of the political shows. It kills around 500,000 Americans annually, and there's nothing funny about that. It's an entirely avoidable situation. These are entirely avoidable illnesses for almost everyone who dies from them. Welcome to Marlboro country, the real Marlboro country, really. That's the place. And then there's alcohol. Alcohol is still advertised on TV. You can, especially around sporting events. I would be lying to you if I told you that one of the if I told you that I was not looking forward to the beer commercials around the Super Bowl. They are terrific. Actually, all the commercials around the Super Bowl are terrific. Companies spend years developing a commercial to show there and spend gazillions getting 30 minutes of airtime. And you still hear advertisements for alcohol on the radio, and you still see advertisements for alcohol in print. Remember William Randolph Hearst? Give me a magazine cover with a beautiful girl, a dog, or a baby on it, and I'll give you a magazine that sells. Beautiful girls sell stuff. Cute sells. Handsome sells. Sexy sells. So, could lead us to the question, what does sex have to do with beer? That's a good question. I bet some of y'all have asked that. Quite a lot, it seems. Coors Light, Budweiser, St. Pauli, and Budweiser again. Thirsty yet? So I don't know why a chick in a bikini on a beer can would make me want to buy this product, but I'm gonna look at this product and remember this product. This one, oh my goodness, we could talk about this a while. Freud could go nuts on that. That is an obvious reference to a blowjob, guys. So Budweiser sells. Enjoy that foamy beer, girl. And this long-legged critter. And these three girls who hang around with Spuds MacKenzie, the party animal beer spokesman of the 80s, who was fantabulously popular at the time, and always had these three drop-dead gorgeous girls with him, and he's an ugly little dog, right? What's the message going on there? Well, the message going on there is that alcohol ads promise you a number of things. Social success. An ugly little dog like Spuds MacKenzie gets invited to all the parties. He's the most popular guy there, as a matter of fact. He is the party animal. Sexual success. Hell yeah. With those three really good-looking girls, there's implications there. They don't spell it out for you, but there's implications in all of them, and you can see it for yourself if you want to. Alcohol ads promise you good times. This is something that you do with your friends. This is something that you do as a social outlet. This is da-da-da-da-da. And it promises you relaxation. This is a way that you socialize, unwind, etc., and so forth. Oddly enough, the one thing you never see anyone do in a beer commercial is actually drink beer. It's against the law to do that. Go figure. That's some kind of thing. We wouldn't want people to start drinking because we model the behavior for them, would we? So you'll see these kind of things. People will lift their frosty mugs with their friends and smile and grin and bring it up towards their mouths, and then they'll set their frosty mug down and they'll have the condensate dripping down the glass, and everything is wonderful. But no one ever puts this stuff to their mouth and swallows it in an American beer commercial. The ads use tried and true marketing devices, including that targeted advertising. This is a 2003 commercial that was terrifically popular. I think it was 2003. It may have been later than that. And these are the Klamaszewski twins, who went on to do music videos with rappers and stuff like that, and had a pretty good little career boost out of doing this. I've also posted this commercial on in your classroom so that you can go look at it for yourself. I like quarterbacks eating dirt, pom-poms and short skirts, watching my team win with the twins, and I love you too. Here's the football. What the twins got to do with football? Oh, everything. Yep, those twins. And by the way, these twins, they make it a real point that you know that these are the twins too. All right? And what message are they trying to get across? Who would these ads appeal to? Yep, you're absolutely right. Young, white, single males between the ages of 18 and 35. If it appeals to other demographics, if other people are pulled into that net, that's a bonus, but that's not who's targeted. It's targeted to young, white, single males between the ages of 18 and 35. Now, I love women, and always have, and I have, gone to bars and met them and talked to them and had great times with them, actually. But apparently you're appreciated in bars, ladies, because they have ladies' nights. Why do you think they have ladies' nights? What was that? Absolutely. That's why they have ladies' nights. We let you in at half price. We let you in at free. First drinks on us, whatever scheme they're doing to bring in the women. Because you know what happens when you bring a lot of women into your bar? Damn right, a lot of men follow and act foolish and spend a ton of money and stuff like that there. So you're a marketing ploy sometimes too. Just saying, no disrespect. Targeted advertising exists for everyone. Drive around town. Look around at the billboards. Stop at a convenience store. See what's being sold prominently. It depends on where you are. Cerveza Tecate. What part of town are you going to find them in? I'm not being racist here. I'm being observational. If you're in a town with if you're in a part of town with a high Latin population, you see a lot of Jose Cuervo. You see a lot of Cerveza Tecate. You see a lot of Dos Equis. And it's advertised there, and sometimes it's advertised in Spanish, como eso. It says, ¿Con quién vas a disfrutar el gran juego? And with whom are you going to enjoy the big game? With you, of course. Absolutely. You got it. Here's an older Cerveza Tecate advertisement, and it's obviously targeted toward Mexicans or Mexican Americans. In this case, I would say probably Mexicans. Traditional dress, and what is the link here? The link again is sexual success. He's obviously pursuing this coy and lovely young woman. And I don't know if he's feeding her lots of Tecate and making her more receptive that way, or if she's just going, oh, senor, because he's so macho, because he's drinking Cerveza Tecate. Anyway, Billy D. Williams. Oh, my God, Lando Calrissian is selling malt liquor. Yep. And guess what he wins because he's doing that? Sexual success. Tómalo frío. Take it home cold, right? Leads us to that one. Viva Latinas, finally a cold Latina. And that's a variation, because the original ad campaign, which caught a lot of flack for objectifying Latino women, said finally a Latina that isn't hot was the original tagline. Now it's finally a cold Latina, which is basically saying the same damn thing, but get it? Yep. Malt liquor. Now that appeals to everyone, right? Right? It does appeal to everyone, right? It's sure not targeted to everyone. King Cobra malt liquor. King Cobra had Richard Roundtree, and I'm trying to think of who else was the guy that did that. And this girl, who was, again, another drop-dead gorgeous woman. She's got, 4 miles of legs and a little black dress, getting out of the back of a limo where Richard Roundtree's also getting out. And not Richard Roundtree, Carl Weathers, I'm sorry. And they made, he's wearing a tux. She's in her killer LBD. They're wealthy, successful, getting out, but they're drinking King Cobra malt liquor. And King Cobra malt liquor's catchline is, don't let the smooth taste fool you. Think about that for a moment. What's a liquor telling you when it tells you, don't let the smooth taste fool you? is telling you that this tastes smooth, you won't notice it, but it will kick your cranium in, man. This is some bold, bad stuff here. Speaking of that, private stock 40s. It's so good it's bad. Oh, I bet it is. King Cobra malt liquor. What has this to do with that? Oh no, but it's a really good ad, isn't it? What do you think? Old English 800 with a cool dude on it with a Compton hat. What's that appealing to? What's that telling you about you? Who's going to walk in and see that and go, hey, that's me? Yeah, I want some of that. Think it's an accident? Think somebody just lucked onto that? Nah, you don't. You're too smart for this. Alcohol ads can be very entertaining, and one of your assignments is going to be to look for some. And someone suggests some. Coors Light has some terrific alcohol ads. Budweiser, Red Stripe beer, that's Bahamian beer. It is, I love Red Stripe beer commercials. It's got the guy who's wearing the official sash like he's a diplomatic dignitary or something, and he comes out and says very dignified, Red Stripe beer, helping our white friends dance for 30 years. Hooray beer. That kind of thing. And I love to watch the commercials, and I get a kick out of watching the commercials, but I'm not going to buy their product. And I kind of wish they wouldn't show the commercials to anybody but me, because I don't want other people to see that and go out and buy their products. But there's oldies, Falstaff and Jack's beer, and some particularly hilarious ones. One of my favorite Jack's beer commercials is it's a cartoon. A man and his wife are in the living room, and the wife, and there's a guy in a house coat in the background. He's in the refrigerator, and he's getting a 6-pack of Jack's beer out of the refrigerator. And the wife says, there's something I got to talk to you about, Harry. And Harry says, oh? Well, what would that be? She said, she says, it's about our Mellow Jack's beer coming up missing all the time. And he says, well, I don't know what I can do about that, or something to that effect. And you see the guy sneaking off, and he picks up a coat and a hat in the background, the guy that's holding the 6-pack. And he's going out the door. She says, I wish you'd speak to your uncle about that. And the dude says, my uncle? I thought he was your uncle. When the guy's out the door with the beer. Funny. The cowboy who wants to buy his horse a drink. Give my horse a Mellow Jack's beer. I'm sorry, we don't serve horses in here. But, look, man, we don't serve horses in here. And he turns to his horse and he says, sorry, Paint. And the horse turns back to him and says, that's okay, Tex, I'm driving. Cool commercials. Find Your Beach, Corona at Corona. And Corona has done a successful advertisement with the Find Your Beach ads. Right now, Coors has a new product out called Coors Hard Seltzer, and they have 4 flavors of seltzer water that they're marketing. This I think is 4.25 or 4.5 alcohol content, right? And the hard seltzer, but their catchphrase, their tagline on that is for the rivers. And the advertisement campaign is for every one of these containers that you buy that has a hard seltzer in it, will return 500 gallons of clear water back into the rivers. Talk about whores. Anyway, tastes great, less filling, Miller Lite Classic. Athletes, models, writers, sportscasters, comedians, other recognizable people get together for 30 to 60 seconds. Models, Cat Fight is one of the bigger of the Taste Great, Less Filling classics, and I'll talk about that later. These characters get together in scenarios where they argue about taste great or less filling with one another. And the first recognizable athlete to do that was Joe Namath, who was quarterback for the New York Jets, won Super Bowl III, all that good stuff. Nowadays he's selling Social Security, not Social Security, Medicaid, whichever it is that plans. But anyway, Joe Namath, Mickey Spillane, who was a very famous hard-bitten detective writer. He wrote the Mike Hammer series. Rodney Dangerfield, I Don't Get No Respect, old school thing. Bob Uecker, who played the sports announcer in Major League. Joe Frazier, who was a professional prize fighter. Lots of people from that era were in these commercials, and this is one of the most in the top 10 of the most effective advertising campaigns of all time, of forever. And I think it was somewhere like number 8, something like that. So give me a Miller Lite with a twist of guilt, please. This is Charles Aaron Smith, also known as Bubba. Bubba's autobiography was a book called Kill, Bubba, Kill. And that was something that that his fans would chant at him from the stands when he was a Wolverine at Michigan State, when he was a Baltimore Colt in Maryland, when he was an Oakland Raider in California, and his last 2 years when he was a Houston Oiler in Texas. Bubba was he was something. In this commercial, and I posted it in your course room too. Bubba comes out and he says, he said, I used to run into the backfield, my method, and I just wrap up the whole backfield and throw people out till I found the guy that had the ball, right? And he said, now I like Miller Lite, tastes great and it's less filling. And then he says, I also like the easy opening can, and he rips the top off of the can. You may also recognize him as Hightower from the Police Academy movies, which the Police Academy movies and the Miller Lite commercials were, probably his most recognizable stuff. But he did a lot of acting, had quite a resume. But he was most famous for Police Academy and for these commercials. Bubba Smith died in 2011. He was under the influence of drugs at the time. And he had a bunch of other physical conditions, an enlarged heart with a lot of blocked arteries. There was a lot of reasons that Bubba could have died, but it was at the time it was ruled a drug-related death, not necessarily an overdose, because, like I said, he had a lot of other things going on with him. Not the least of which was chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, because he had taken too many shots to the head as a football player. But Miller Lite with a twist of guilt. He had a Michigan State University revelation. I don't remember the year. He was chosen to be Grand Marshal of the Michigan State Homecoming Parade. Boy, there's a herd of deer moving across the field behind my house. Big old buck. Sorry, distracted. He's selected to be Grand Marshal of their parade. And as they're going down the street having their parade, he noticed that there were a bunch of obviously inebriated college kids. And on one side of the street, they started chanting, tastes great. And on the other side, they began chanting, less filling, tastes great, less filling, tastes great, less filling. And he said that bothered him, because in reality, Bubba Smith has never been a drinker. He never drank at all. He was not a drinker when he was doing his commercials for Miller Lite, even though he claimed to be in the commercials. So Bubba Smith, non-drinker, is driving down a parade, doing his waves, and you got these drunk kids on both sides shouting, tastes great, less filling. Then when he got to the stadium and he's announced and he's out there, his fans from the old days are shouting, kill Bubba, kill Bubba, kill, you know, and he's responding to that. And he said, then I hear the younger ones who never saw me play. I'm tastes great, less filling, tastes great, less filling. And he said, I had this revelation. I'm selling alcohol to children. And he told his brother, who was there with him, you know, who was also his agent, no more beer commercials. And he never did another one. My respect for Bubba Smith is totally through the roof, man. I mean, it just leaps and bounds that day, you know. And sometimes when you're doing products like this, I think there's a blind spot with people who put them together and who do the marketing. They must have a blind spot because, you know, you have to see the damage that this stuff causes people. And if you can't see the damage, man, I don't even know what to say to that. And don't forget the dogs. You know, we got the sports figures, the beautiful girls. How about this one? This is the Budweiser campaign with the dogs and the Clydesdales. All three of these is Budweiser. The cute puppies who are dreaming of growing up and being just like this one, who ride on the Clydesdale pulled Budweiser wagon, who ride on the fire wagon. And I mean, you know, William Randolph Hearst is right. Who doesn't want to buy this product? You know, looking at this dog and a horse and their friendship. This was a Super Bowl commercial that went wild. They got separated, and then later when the dog's grown, he reunites with his Clydesdale buddy, and it's all beautiful. And I guess the moral of the story is they go have a freaking beer or something afterwards. But nevertheless, these images are designed to appeal to you and to draw your attention from these puppies to Budweiser. Puppy, Budweiser, horse. There's Budweiser in here too. I just didn't select that picture. So those things. Well, at least they didn't use a baby to sell this crap, did they? Born Gentle, Philip Morris, using a baby to sell cigarettes. In conclusion, time and money is spent on audience research. Certain devices are utilized almost universally in such as product placement, subliminal suggestions, linking, the traditional approaches to advertising. Beautiful girls, dogs, and babies sell, but what do they sell? And is it healthy? And is it good for you? And is it ethical? And you know, all of those stuff are good questions, but the one question we haven't asked is it profitable? Hell, yes. It is very, 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 very profitable. And profit is the bottom line, right? I have tried to divest out of my, out of my retirement, my stocks and things like that, to make sure that none of my money is tied up in tobacco or alcohol. I'm not going to do that. You know, I don't want that kind of link, because it's blood money. It's what it is. And I don't want to invest in and make money off of, say, the tobacco industry, which slaughtered my family. You know, I don't want anything to do with that. But it's kind of hard to manage that sometimes. So there's an ethics to this as well. And there's product liability. In the 80s, there was a huge tobacco lawsuit, a product liability lawsuit that really hurt the tobacco companies in the United States. But in the United States, right? R.J. Reynolds, Philip Morris, all of them are still doing a hell of a business in foreign sales. So the banning them in the United States or limiting them or having lawsuits won against them in the United States affects a market, but it does not affect all the markets. And so they've still got a lot going on. And so advertisers, people who are putting ads together, ad men, there's a real good, I think you can probably find it on Netflix, a real good series about the advertising, is called Mad Men, M-A-D-M-E-N, Mad Men, 2 words. And it's about advertising in the 50s and 60s. And it's got a lot of this stuff in it, by the way. I recommend it. It's also a very good series. It's entertaining. But in how they run these ad campaigns to get people to purchase what they've got to sell. And sometimes the direct approach works best. This is my other favorite magazine cover. And it says simply, if you don't buy this magazine, we'll kill this dog. And you don't want that on your conscience, do you? I didn't think you did. I didn't think so. So there you have it. And that's not a comprehensive explanation or study, and we could do a whole semester on this stuff. The types of things that people do to catch your attention, to make you go, look at this, now look at that, because that's exactly what they're doing. Look at her, look at this, look at that, look at this, look at him, look at her, look at them, look at them, look at that, look at that. And how long you look and what you look at and how we put it together and how we link it is up to us. It's not up to you. When you're watching a movie or a TV program or a commercial or anything like that, it's the directors, the writers, the producers who are deciding what you're going to hear, what you're going to see, what you're going to look at, how long you're going to look at it, and they're also manipulating all this stuff, all of these elements in such a way as you're going to draw the conclusion that they want you to draw at the end of it, which has got to have that stuff, right? And go out and purchase. Buy, 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 buy. Mo ming, mo ching, right? Anyway, hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you the next time around, and bye.